message. So we will record this so that we can send it out later. And Michelle, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to visit this webinar, and hopefully you learned something or unlearn something at this point with this topic today. So we're going to be talking about domestic violence only impacts adults. So we're going to be talking about the myths, the fact or fiction side of that. So let's go ahead and get started.
You may have to actually click back on the slide. Sometimes when you click off of it, it doesn't let you.
Okay.
And then
okay.
Bottom.
Sorry.
There you go.
Got it. Thanks. Our first fact or fiction stat we have here is some things that are said by a lot of survivors as far as their hesitance to leave. We have one here: my child will be unhappy or hate me if we leave home. That is actually a fiction for our standpoints. And a lot of things that we try to tell survivors, the children benefit from a happy home, not necessarily especially if it's a tumultuous two-parent home. If they're away from the tension and negativity and the stress, the relief will be visible once the separation occurs. And communication is definitely key when it comes to children of domestic violence. Always have those age-appropriate conversations with those children. If they're, toddlers or, 5 or 6 year olds, you have those conversations that they can understand, in terms that they can understand that, your parents right now, mommy or daddy, or whatever dynamic the parent home is, if they're not getting along right now, or we just need some time apart from each other to learn how to be friends. However it may be, if you have adolescent children in the home of domestic violence, you have those conversations with them so that they know what's going on. Usually when a child is, has any kind of animosity to the survivor parents, it's because they don't know what's going on. And that's the most important thing, to make sure that you communicate with them, and they will prosper once you start to do so. Once they understand what's going on, they'll definitely prosper in their development with school, academically, mentally, and physically. A lot of children kind of take on the stress of domestic violence, and you can be visible to them. But once you communicate with them, once they understand what's going on and able to process it, just like how the survivor needs to process it themselves, and that can definitely trickle on down. The new dynamic as a single parent household will be a positive experience for both the survivor and the children. You'll notice definitely a difference in that child, no matter what their age is, whether they will be understand more, and it's just be a positive place for them to prosper. Another stat that we have here, something that a lot of survivors experience: children who witness violence in the home will grow up to be violent themselves. This is something that is a fact. A lot of people, have the kind of misconception that maybe, if you take them out the home early enough, then they won't be subject to this. Actually, studies show that children of violent homes are more than likely to grow up to be aggressors themselves. And as we're looking into this topic, as I was doing a little bit of research, you'll know that it's kind of unknown whether the child will either be an aggressor themselves, or they might learn to be an advocate, or be against aggression completely, or completely against domestic violence, to go the complete opposite way. So studies are out on that, but it is studies that have been shown that they become aggressors themselves. They begin to mimic the behavior of the aggressor as well. In my experience, as Jessica said, I worked in shelter for a long time. You see these children, 5, 6 year olds, 10-year-olds mimicking, you can tell what the abuse was in the home, because this child is now doing the same thing to their mother. And it's up to the mother, in my experience in shelter, it was a lot of mothers. It's up to the mother in order to correct those behaviors and let them know what's right, what's wrong, and how to deal with their emotions. Definitely. And each child experience is different also. It might be something that they've seen visibly. It may be something they've only heard. And, there's some children have already experienced the abuse firsthand, whether it be physically or verbally as well. Whatever the survivor has experienced, the child is experiencing the same thing. And it's very unfortunate, but you have to be able to address the type of trauma that this child would be having. and address in a way that they know how to process it. And that's the most important thing, how to process it in their little minds and help them understand what's going on and how to deal with it moving forward. All right. A lot of misconception as well. If I call the police, they will take my children away. A lot of people automatically hear, this is fiction. A lot of people automatically hear, think of domestic violence, and they don't want to call the police because they think DCF will be in their life forever. DCF will be called. That is a fact. But it does not automatically mean that your children will be taken away out of your care. The DCF, their priority is the safety of the children. They want to make sure that you're putting the children first. And as long as you're doing that, you're typically safe from removal. A lot of survivors don't call the police as well because they think that the police will, like I said, the police will think of them unfit parents because they're not being protective, or they'll think that if the child gets hurt as well. There's so many misconceptions about calling law enforcement as well, and especially when it comes to your children. It's a negative. So a lot of survivors go with unreported DV for so long, and a lot longer than it should be, because of this fear of getting the children taken away. Another thing that we have factor fiction here, we have a lot of survivors say, I can protect my child from the abuse. This is a fact. On this slide, I have some of the safety plan actions that we have set in place that for our DV classes that we have here at Peace River Center. This is some of the safety plans that we kind of go over with our survivors when it comes to their children. One of the things that we try to make sure, just kind of give everybody a job. If you have multiple children in the home, make sure one child is calling 911. If you have older siblings, taking care of younger siblings, getting them to the hiding place. Designate a hiding place in the home, whether it be a closet or attic, under the bed. Just make sure they know what the plan is in case the aggression becomes out of control in the home. Also have a code word that I think this is very important. Have a code word with the children, just so they know to start initiating the safety plan. And it's also important as well to just to make sure that the code word is something that the aggressor wouldn't recognize. Only the children would know. Once they hear they say this, the survivor say this word, time to initiate this safety plan, whatever it may be. Kind of go over this safety plan as well, in order to make sure that each child, if it's one child or multiple, know what the plan is. Even if there hasn't been a situation, kind of put this into practice a couple times a month, just so everybody stays fresh and everybody knows what their role is and everybody knows the plan. If the plan is for them to run out of the house to the closest neighbor, make sure that they know their first and last name. Make sure that they know how to call 911. Also, make sure they know how another phone number in order to call up a close family member, whether it be grandparents or a friend, just to know, they know what the plan is to alert somebody else that something is happening in the home where the survivor can't get to a phone. It's important also that they know how to call law enforcement, how to communicate with law enforcement politely, and how to encourage them also to learn their address as well. The more you prepare them, the safer they will be. And that's important to know. Depends on their ages, have that conversation to make sure that they save themselves, and not to be concerned with what's happening with the survivor, but to make sure that they're protecting themselves and getting to a safe place. We also encourage a lot of survivors to have a safety bag. Have one for the children, have a cell phone in there. We also encourage them to have maybe their documentation, have maybe some cash on hand. This is a safety plan is always important that we definitely plan out with our survivors to make sure that they're prepared. Always have a half a tank of gas, always have a phone charger, maybe memorize some phone numbers. In 2021, a lot of people rely on cell phones. Have a number memorized in case you don't have access to your phone and you have to call from a public place or a gas station down the street. Know some phone numbers. And that's just something that, we kind of encourage, just to be sure that you are prepared for whatever may happen. Have a prepaid phone also somewhere in the home, where in case your main phone gets taken by your aggressor or gets broken or something, because it's definitely something that can happen. Always have a prepaid post somewhere else in the home, something that you don't have to kind of keep track of. If you put minutes on it, they still make those. If you have minutes on it, that way it's always have accessible to yourself or to your children as well. This is one slide that I think is very important. My child does not see the abuse, and that's very fiction. I can't stress this enough. Children are so intuitive to what is going on with, especially the main caregiver, whether it be mom or dad. They're so intuitive. They can tell that something's different. They can tell that something's off. They can tell that by the dynamic between the parents in the home that something is just not going right. And even if they don't see it, they know something is wrong. They'll always be able to tell that, you know, the main caregiver is something's going on. If they don't see, even if they don't see the abuse, they know what's going on. And I have down here, you know, things that I've learned from my experience in the shelter and talking to many domestic violence survivors and their children. Keep in mind, if nothing else, they see the cuts, they see the extra makeup used to hide bruises, they see you limping, they can definitely see hurt ribs, they see the bandages, they might be able to even see the bloody tissue in the trash can, they'll see the black eyes, they'll see you not getting out of bed, they'll see the change in routine, especially if you are used to taking them to after school events and that has stopped. If you used to take them to the park and the playground, that has stopped. You used to encourage family dinners around the table. Now that's stopped. They see the non-communication between the parents, where there used to be laughter and love, and now all of a sudden there's something that's different. They can definitely, they may not see the abuse, but they see your tears. They see you withdraw from family. They see you withdraw from play dates. They see the abused parent drinking adult juice or taking happy medicine. A lot of parents use these, you know, a lot of negative coping mechanisms in order to tolerate the abuse until they leave. And that trickles down to the children every time. They see all these different changes. They see the whispered conversation. They see the fake smiles to make sure that they're okay, to make them think everything is okay. But they don't see the abuse. And this is very wrong. They see the results of the abuse. And what they see the most is definitely fear. They see your fear of the unknown. They see your fear of trying to make it to think that they can provide for themselves and provide for the children or the child. They see the fear, and that will trickle down and cause so many different things that can very much be detrimental for the child. A lot of times you'll see the children going through their own depression at such a young age. I have had one survivor, her teenager started losing her hair because she's under so much stress about what's going to happen next. A lot of the times the relationship between the child and the parent is so close and so tight up between the abused parent specifically. They're so close that they're almost the child turns into the parent at some points, and that takes a lot of stress. I've seen also in shelter where, you know, child at 6 or 7 has to be able to take care of the siblings and the mom, especially if there's a language barrier. I've also seen that where the children have to become the parent to the actual parent, to the abused parent. And it's very unfortunate that children have to experience that. A lot of the times, you know, people think that it's just such a common misconception that they think that the children don't see the abuse when they actually don't see it and they feel it even more. Here we have our information here that this is the 3 counties that we do take care of, our crisis lines. Please know that if you know of experiences in yourself or you know anybody, here's some information that you can pass along to them. Victim Services here is located in Polk County, and we also have offices in Highlands and Hardee in different locations. Please, if you know anybody that's experiencing this, if you know any children that need help, any adults that need help, please pass along our information to them.
So Michelle, I have a couple questions to kind of get
I'm ready.
Things kicked off. So if anyone does have questions, feel free to use the raise hand feature, the Q&A, or the chat. But I know I attended a couple years back just the most moving domestic violence vigil that was held to honor the individuals whose lives had been lost, unfortunately, as well as those that had actually made it out, but not by very much. Like they were incredibly injured in trying to escape the relationship. One of the stories that was told was about how the children, in their younger ages had made the mom feel guilty. Like, oh, daddy isn't around anymore. Like, how dare you, I want my daddy, especially for like younger boys. Sometimes that's really hard. Can you explain how you all as advocates help parents kind of release themselves from that guilt so that they're putting theirs and their children's safety above that guilt of, doing what needs to be done?
Absolutely. That, specifically, I'm just gonna address, that abused parent guilt is so strong, and specifically with moms, we're more than likely the primary caregiver, and the abused as well. The mom guilt already is humongous and massive, and then when you are moving that child from a place that they're so familiar with that two-parent household, into somewhere where it might be shelter, or it might be another family member's home, and you're trying to separate yourself. It's so important to communicate to that child that this is what has to be done for the betterment for them and for yourself. Please explain, please, in terms that they'll understand that this is something that will be a benefit. You won't understand it now, but later on in life, it'll be something that you'll look back and understand why I had to do this. It's something that's going to keep us safe. Like I said, in terms that they can understand, something that it's going to keep us safe, and it's going to make sure that it stays happy and positive, and in order for them to grow up in a positive way.
Thank you so much for that. And then
you're welcome.
Sort of related to that is, we know that sometimes there's a time frame around when survivors are actually able to leave. They might be trying to save money, or get even just, quickly get their things together so that they can have some of their essentials with them when they leave. How do you recommend, or is that something that you handle with them? Because I know one of the big myths that, we should probably address in all of these webinars is that you all provide support not only for those in the shelter, but those in the community as well. So
absolutely,
planning and so forth. So how, I guess, would you suggest, kids, they, like you said, they're picking up on this abuse. How do you explain to them that, we are getting to safety, but we just need a little bit more time?
Mm-hmm. It is something that, like I said, make it age appropriate. I need to make sure we have a place, and we make sure we have access to money, and make sure we have access to food. Those are those basic needs. Everything else can come later. Once you have a shelter, access to food, and access to, maybe transportation, those are the things that are essential. So it's important to have the conversation of, I need however much time. I need 2 weeks, maybe wait till next pay period. We need to wait 2 weeks, and then we'll be able to get away from this situation. We need to be patient. We need to be on our best behavior. Because like you said, it's one of those things, that crucial time and that planning mode is where it can be very crucial. The aggressor might even pick up on that because you're changing your routine, you're changing your moves, and they pick up on that. That's the one thing aggressors will know once you start to change. So it's so important to keep that routine, keep things the same, so that the exit can be made safely.
And that's where you all are available to really help people one-on-one walk through that.
Absolutely. Safety planning is such a huge part of our job, because we have the safety plan no matter what the situation is, whether they haven't left the home yet, whether they have left the home and the aggressor is in jail, whether the aggressor is not in jail and out looking for them. Safety planning can look so many different ways for everybody's situation.
We do have a question. What if the court system fails the survivors and the children are removed from the survivor mom and given back to the perpetrator? I realize this happens a lot. When mom receives, or if mom receives the children back in her care, how can she rebuild with her children?
It is so important to make sure that, like I said, communication is key. It does happen, and the court system only goes off of what it sees, not what it knows. And the survivor knows exactly what they've been through. and what they've experienced, and nobody else will walk in their shoes at all. It's important that once that child gets returned and that bond is ready to be rebuilt, because sometimes it does get broken because you have no communication for months at a time. If the children, there's no visitation or anything like that, it's important to rebuild that bond as strong as it was before. Whether it's spending time, it is definitely just being there, it's definitely listening. Family therapy is also definitely something that can be taken advantage of, and just in order to learn how to communicate with that. And we offer that with Peace River Center as well.
As I was going to suggest, I know a lot of times you all do counseling, but then we can also refer them to outpatient therapy if something more intensive is needed. I know we have evidence-based practices that really help parents reestablish that bond.
Absolutely.
And if there's anger issues, and sometimes it's just a time thing too, because they won't know until they get a little bit older.
Exactly.
She said, "Thank you. I agree. I appreciate your response."
You're welcome.
So then you kind of touched on this about like the financial fear, and obviously, financial abuse is a big part of domestic violence and is often a big barrier to people leaving. When kids are involved, they think, little Johnny is so used to having his karate lessons and his that. Like, if I leave my aggressor, then I won't be able to provide that. Can you talk to a little bit about some of the financial services that we offer and how you guys help these survivors rebuild their lives?
Absolutely. We recognize wholeheartedly that, a huge reason why survivors don't leave is because they don't know if the aggressor is a sole breadwinner, and they don't know how they're going to afford being on their own. Some people have never been on their own. Some people it has been a long time since they have been on their own, and they wouldn't even know where to start from. And that's definitely where we come in. We offer our relocation assistance through the OAG, Office of Attorney General, through the state of Florida. There's an application process, and that all you need is a police report and a new lease for a new place to stay. And we can definitely fill that out. And there's they find you eligible, and you're granted up to $1,000. There's a lot of victims compensation that can be done, especially if there is any kind of medical bills or any loss of work. There's a victim compensation program also that we can help you fill out that necessary paperwork in order to get you reimbursed for that as well. We also have our, through our in-house relocation assistance as well, to assist with that, kind of financial assistance, just in order to kind of get you set up on that foundation in order for you to move forward in this new life. Like I mentioned before, in this new dynamic of single parenthood, that was not the plan. You might have an aggressor that is refusing to pay any kind of child support, refusing to give any kind of contribution because they want you to come back home. But it's so important to know that you have options, and the option to go back is not your only one. So it's our main thing. And the one thing that I encourage especially when I come into a new client, is just so they know their options. And a lot of people don't even know what their options are. And it's definitely up to us here at Peace River to give them.
I think that's a lot of part of the abuse, is sometimes that their abuser makes them think that they don't have any options. So to offer that is huge.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times in abuse, there's isolation, you've burned bridges, unfortunately. So where victim services play such a key role, because they help rebuild that support network. I know we've had quotes from clients that have said, I've never had the kind of emotional support I have now in the support network. So you guys.
Absolutely. With survivors now, there's definitely an important part of our job is just to kind of just check in, to let our survivors know that, hey, I'm thinking about you. I want to make sure you're okay. How are you feeling today? Because with the time after separation from your aggressor, it's an emotional roller coaster that you just have to strap in for. And we're here in outreach services and in shelter to strap in with you, because we know that roller coaster, it has their highs and it has its lows. And it's just something that you have to be prepared for.
And one of the things I wanted to ask about also was multi-generational abuse, so you have endured abuse, you've gotten away from the abuse. How do you set up so that, when your child is a teen, that abuse isn't repeating? Or even if you yourself, get back to dating, can you talk about some of the ways that you all, I know you go over red flags of dating and what a healthy relationship looks like. Can you kind of review that for us?
Absolutely. When it comes to, pursuing a new relationship as a survivor, like you said, there's definitely red flags to look out for that controlling aspect. And I think a huge part of that is to make sure that you maintain as much independence as possible. That way you'll never relinquish control. And this is going to be somebody that you want in your life and not necessarily need in your life. It's important that with your children, as they come into adolescence and into being a teenager, to teach them as well what to look for, to make sure to keep yourself safe, whether it's to kind of make sure everything's met in a public place, make sure your opinion is being heard, make sure that, you know, there's that controlling aspect, that power and control aspect is not started and shut down from the very beginning. And if there's something that they are uncomfortable with, to make sure that they are talking to you about it as well, or they're talking to someone. It doesn't even necessarily have to be you. Make sure that they're talking to someone. Back to being a survivor yourself, moving into a new relationship, it's important that your needs are definitely being heard and you set your boundaries as well. Coming into a new relationship as a survivor, there's going to be a lot of pushback, a lot of tension. You won't know, there's a lot of trust has to be built. And that's the main thing. Trust has to be built from the ground up. And that's going to take a little while longer than any other relationship when you're dealing with a relationship with a survivor.
Thank you for that. Make sure there's no more questions. My last question was going to be, you know, I don't see it often, but I have heard it mentioned about co-parenting with an aggressor. So if the aggressor has gone to counseling and is deemed not to be, you know, a threat to the children, obviously the separation has occurred with the relationship itself of mom and dad. But, you know, if you are co-parenting with an aggressor, you all offer support for that as well. I'm sure it's not quite as common as normal, but
absolutely. We definitely offer our safety plan options as well. If you have to co-parent with, I always have a third party where if it's to the point where you cannot be around each other at all, it's important to have maybe a third party, a go-between for the drop off and pick up. It goes to the point where even if you don't have a third party, drop off and pick up is going to have to be at a police station. It's gotten to that point with some of our survivors. Drop off and pick up has to be at a police station where there will be no more incidents and everybody acts accordingly. Maybe in a public place that has cameras where everything can be accounted for, anything can be recorded. I know Walmart has cameras in their parking lot, and I know there's quite a few other places that has cameras, and so that's something that you can research in order. If you don't have a third party option, have a third party place, a place that's makes you feel safe enough, somewhere that's lit, somewhere that there's always people, to make sure that there's no further incidents.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone else have any more questions? We will take those in the chat. You can use the Q&A, the raise hand feature. This has been so helpful. Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm sure, you know, there's goes on, like you had mentioned, you know, touched on the fact that there's things that we thought didn't happen that actually do. So this has been very, very enlightening. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to definitely be a part of it, just to kind of raise any kind of awareness, any kind of questions, you know, offer a different perspective for sure when it comes to domestic violence.
Absolutely. And we will send out this recording. So if you do have any questions that you didn't feel comfortable asking, or any specific points you'd like to follow up on, by all means, you know, give us a reply email. We'll get that to victim services, or, you know, you can call the office directly. I tell people, even if they, you know, a lot of times as friends and family, we get involved in these situations and we might not exactly know how to navigate it. One of the things to be aware is obviously when a survivor decides to leave, that is some of the most dangerous time for everybody involved. So even if you just want help as a support system to someone leaving a situation, you know, you all offer that kind of support as well. So
absolutely, we definitely get calls on our crisis line of a family member, a mother or a sister or a brother, a child who knows somebody who's experiencing domestic violence, and they know that person will call for themselves. But if they participate in, you know, finding out information for that survivor, it might be different coming from that loved one compared to us. So we definitely encourage, if you know somebody, information again, these are the counties that we cover. Our office line, you can call and ask at any time on our crisis line, 24/7.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And,
You're very welcome.
the way you can support during Victim Services Month and beyond is just to share the post. If you see on the Victim Services page a post with the crisis line numbers, go ahead and share it. You never know who in your reach of social media might be impacted by domestic violence. So we absolutely share it. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Michelle.